Hey, what's up, Unbroken Nation? Hope that you're having an amazing day wherever you are in the world. Today, we are joined by Mike Young, who is the founder and president of the Association of Mental Health and Wellbeing for Entrepreneurs and the host of the Made Over podcast. Mike, how are you, my friend? What is going on?
Michael, thanks for having me on, man. It's good to see you again, and I'm so grateful to be here.
Yeah, I'm grateful for you to be here myself, man. I love the energy you bring. I love the conversation that you're having about mental well-being. As many of the listeners of the Unbroken Nation know, I am an entrepreneur, have been pretty much since I was a young boy. I think ultimately it's like the best part about being a human being is you kind of get to live life on your own terms. I've also worked for corporate America and I've done the whole nine, right? But entrepreneur and mental well-being is not synonymous right now. And I really love that you're talking about this. A huge part of my journey and my mental health has been to be able to be aware, especially as an entrepreneur, about what's going on with me. But before we dive in, Mike, can you tell everybody a little bit about you, a little bit of your background, and ultimately how you kind of got to where you are today?
Yeah, man. I spent the first 23 years of my life thinking I was going to play pro baseball. I really didn't have a plan B. School was just a means to keep playing baseball for me. And then I found myself in my senior year waking up and realizing that dream wasn't going to happen. I ended up tearing a ligament in my elbow in my freshman year. And so I kind of found myself in that place of, okay, what the heck am I going to do with my life? I had a friend in the mortgage industry at the time. I ended up getting into the mortgage industry. We built a company from scratch over a period of 5 years between 2003 and 2008, from like 6 people to 250 employees. And that collapsed in 2008. So I went from liquid millionaire to $200,000 in debt in less than 6 months. And it really was, I think it was a loss of identity, for me at that point. It's just when everything gets stripped away and you're left with nothing, you really begin to question your decision making, your actions. What did I do wrong? All those things. And I knew I wanted to become my own entrepreneur and build something from scratch that was simpler. Because at the end of the mortgage biz, I was getting 400 emails a day. I was working 16, 18-hour days, always in the office. And I just knew that I wanted more freedom than that. I didn't know. I actually thought I was a bit delusional at the time. I thought it was going to be quick and easy because I built this beast of a business. I thought, well, to do it on my own, with a small team's clearly going to be fast and easy for me. And next thing I knew, I was a decade into my journey, still struggling, still couldn't figure it out, and very frustrated as hell, I would say. And it took a lot of failure. It took a lot of taking action before I kind of found my lane and found my space in the entrepreneurial journey.
Yeah, and I think, well, and unfortunately, failure is a part of life. And,
Yeah.
I look at it, I leverage it as a data point. But what I'm really curious about, thinking about and understanding what happened during the crash in '08, it wiped me out as well.
Mm.
It was just a part of, I'd been working this corporate job. I was also starting a side hustle, at that point, this other business I was working on. And I just kind of watched everything I'd built and saved for the last few years just like go down. And I just
Yeah.
watched and watched and watched. And it was like the spiral out of control. And a lot of people that was kind of the end for them. Not
Mhm.
like in a literal way, but in a like motivation's gone. They're never going to do anything again. We hit these rock bottom moments, Mike, and sometimes there are moments that we create and initiate. I definitely take guilt on that for myself for a lot of my experiences in life, but sometimes they're a part of the human experience.
For
How do
sure.
you like navigate that to now put yourself in this position where you're kind of leading the path for mental health awareness in entrepreneurship?
Yeah, there's actually a book I read, and this is around 2014, 2015, and it was called Fooled by Randomness. And that was a really impactful book for me at the time. It was something that Tim Ferriss had recommended on his podcast, and it made me realize that this path of destruction, so to speak. I had I had lived what I was told growing up was the dream. You go to high school, you go to college, you get a job, you build your own company, you get a wife and two kids in a big house, and you're going to be happy. Yet I had done all that and I was miserable. And I had taken on, I'm a big responsibility guy, so I believe that you're in control of your own destiny. I don't make excuses for a lot of things. But having that personality type, also when things don't go well, I beat myself up. I beat myself up for almost 8.5 years, that it's all my fault. I'm an idiot. I'm stupid. So I had a lot of negative self-talk for a very long period of time. And that book just made me realize there are things, many, many things that are out of your control. The market is one of them. And when the market decided to tank like that, it wasn't my fault. It wasn't anything that I did or didn't do. Maybe I could have protected myself and my business differently. But at the end of the day, there was no reason to spend 8.5 years beating myself up over it. And I look back and I just think, God, it was just such a waste of time. And for me, the transition point was I finally got out of my own stubborn ways and asked for help. I asked for help on my mindset. I asked for help on my business, and was able to turn everything around in an 18-month period between 2015 and 2017.
Yeah, and I'm such a big proponent of asking for help. I think that
Mhm.
is really one of the baseline core competencies that we actually are not instilled with in our youth.
Yeah.
And especially as men, and I can only speak as a man, but I understand now, I see it happening with women all the time as well, and everyone in general, where asking for help has become kind of this signature of weakness. And I think it's the most profound and incredibly strong thing that we can do, especially when you're in this place where you do hit this rock bottom, where you are like, what do I do from here?
Yeah.
What's been your process of kind of stepping into not necessarily only awareness in it, but giving yourself the grace and, dare I say, vulnerability to be able to say, I actually do need help right now?
Yeah, I mean, I think now it's easier for me to look back and process it all. At the time, I felt like the world was collapsing in on me, and when you feel like the world's collapsing on you, you become very reactionary. You're thinking about survival, really. Your body is freezing, or it's fighting, or you're running away from something. And so now it's like, when I look back, anytime you start something new, you're gonna kind of suck at it. It doesn't matter what it is. And I wish somebody had sat me down in the beginning and said, look, these are the statistics of entrepreneurship. These are the statistics of starting a new business, especially if you're creative and you're trying to start your own thing, because the stats are, uh, I would just say, littered with failure. The odds of you actually making a product that's creative, from scratch, then figuring out how to market it and promote it and actually sell it in the marketplace, the odds are stacked against you. But I didn't have that mindset going in. I thought it was going to be easy. And so I kept beating myself up every time I failed or every time something didn't work. And if I had kind of taken that mentality, to use the baseball analogy, if I knew that I was going to strike out 7 out of 10 times going in, I would have been a little bit more gentle on myself. And I think life's too short, man. It's like, it's too short to focus on the past. It's too short to get hung up on what you're doing in the future. And if you can kind of stay in that present moment and just realize, like, these are the things I want to do with my life. These are the aims I've got, whether it's health, whether it's mental well-being, whether it's your business, whatever it is, and just make continual incremental progress towards those things. That's when the happiness becomes the byproduct, when you can see yourself making progress towards something that you value.
Yeah, I love that. I appreciate that a lot too, because my measurement for success is not the destination. It
Mm,
used to be, and I'd be like, oh, I'm only going to be happy when that thing happens. And now I look at it as like, can I celebrate micro wins? Can I look at little things in my life that I can attribute to progress? It's
yeah.
small, granular, microscopic, incremental change that on a long enough period of time actually starts to help us go in the direction that we want. But
For
Mike,
sure.
and I know that you're an entrepreneur and I am too, but a lot of people listening are not. And
Yep.
I think that a lot of the practical concepts and understandings about entrepreneurship actually carry over.
For
I
sure.
think that's why I'm so attracted to it and have done it for so long, because I look at this, I go, we're always going to be hit with adversity in life. We're
Yeah.
always going to be in this position where it'll be the next pandemic or the next death or the next, the global catastrophe. Like, I
Yeah.
think, unfortunately, that's just been a part of the human experience since we were humans.
And
So,
that's, it's such a good point, because that's the actual game. The game is falling in love with the process of everything falling apart on you and you putting it back together in a transformed way. Like that's the game that you need to fall in love with. It doesn't matter if it's sports or entrepreneurship or relationships. If you can realize that there are going to become moments in your life that things will fall apart, and your job is to kind of pick up the pieces, put it back together, and keep moving forward. And I just got fascinated at understanding, like, because I found myself during 4 different times in my entrepreneurial journey where I found myself wondering, why is this happening to me? What's wrong with me? All those negative questions. And so I went very heavy into psychology and neuroscience and just started studying, like, what's going on in my actual brain and my body? Why do I feel this way? And one of the things that you touched on is we have 2 types of reward systems in our brain. We have consummatory rewards, which are I arrive or achieve my destination. But the problem with that, and the second type of reward is incentive rewards. The problem with consummatory rewards is, as soon as you achieve your destination, I'm hungry, let's say, I eat a sandwich, then it squashes the previous frame that you're dealing from, and you're kind of left with this success crisis. You're like, I achieved my thing. What the hell do I do next? And people can relate to that when they graduate high school, when they graduate college, when they get married, when they have their first child. It's like, I did the thing, and you find yourself in this moment of crisis. What the hell do I do next? And so it's much better, just physiologically and psychologically, it's much better if you're always incentivizing yourself through incentive rewards, which are making progress and daily progress towards something, knowing that there is no arrival, like, because the arrival is just an illusion.
yeah, it truly is. And that's why you see so often professional athletes, which are a great marker for this, win a championship and they're like, I don't know what to do with my life.
Yeah.
Right. You see it happen with Olympic athletes too, where you go, I don't know what's next.
Yep.
I even had that experience early on in my speaking career. I would get on stage and I'd get off, like, I did such a good job. And then it was to be, I would feel blank, for lack of
Yeah.
a better term. And then I understood something. And that was like, that was only just a marker as I'm moving towards this larger goal, which for me is huge. It's in generational trauma in my lifetime. I'm not
Yep.
saying you have to have this huge, grandiose goal, but I'm saying maybe it does help. But Mike, one of the things that I'm curious about is, coming back to that baseball mentality, you would have thought through beating yourself up differently if you knew you're going to strike out 7 out of 10 times. I think very often what happens, though, is the moment people hear, I'm going to strike out 7 out of 10 times, they're too afraid to even start and step into the arena.
For
So
sure.
how do you like mitigate that? Because my mentality is very much like, face your fear, commit, do it anyway, see what happens, understand that failure is inevitable, whether you like it or not. But I know for some people that's a really hard concept to understand.
For
So
sure.
especially when thinking about, as you want to pursue endeavors in your life and the possibility of failure is there, how do you not freeze in that but continue to move towards it?
Yeah, I would say, I mean, like, when it comes to entrepreneurship, if that scares you and you feel like you need motivation and stuff, maybe entrepreneurship's not for you. That's okay. It's okay to, there are different personality types, and some people are able to take on more stress. They're able to handle the fear and even rejection a little bit better, and that's not for everybody. So that's the first thing. I think one of the big problems is, when I was a kid and watching baseball, I saw guys failing all the time. I just saw real world, like, hey, these guys strike out, they make mistakes, they make errors. But in the entrepreneurial world, we're filled with social media where everybody's filling up their feeds with their highlight reel. So you see the opposite. You think everybody's successful. You think everybody's marketing is working, and you're wondering why your stuff is not working because you're just seeing the highlight reel. And so just realize that that's an illusion too, that 96% of the things that you're seeing, they're struggling just like you are. And I think when it comes down to how to get over the fear, I just kind of always come back to the fact that life is short. You're going to die. You never know when that moment's going to be for you. And it comes down to like one life. When do you want to go after what you want and stop making excuses? And if you can get something like an underlying motivation that really, really means something to you, and I believe business owners should have two. Because it's kind of like if you've heard that old quote, like if you have a big enough why, you can get through anyhow. But if you have these underlying motivations that mean something to you, it will help you get past your fear. And for me, the two were, I wanted to show my kids what it looked like to go after your dreams and never give up, because I listened to weird things that I hold on to. I listened to an interview with the Dalai Lama, and somebody had asked him, what do I do to show my kids how to act? And he says it, or what do I say? And the Dalai Lama said, it doesn't matter what you say. It only matters what you do, because your kids will model your behavior. And that just stuck with me. And so for me, as I was progressing towards my own version of entrepreneurial success, I knew that if I quit, it showed my kids what it looked like to set a goal and then give up because of fear, because of rejection, because of whatever. And that was more painful to me than quitting itself. And the second why was in 2015, my brother-in-law took his own life, and I knew how that devastated the family and how painful that was. And I knew that there were other entrepreneurs out there just like me that were maybe 3 feet from gold. They needed a little bit of help. They needed a little guidance, whatever it was, but they were, maybe 3 seconds from giving up on their business or giving up on life in general. And that became my other mission. That's why I get up. That's why I go speak. That's why I do what I do. It's because I know there are people out there that are really close. They just need that little, piece of advice or tip, or maybe that aha moment to help tip them over to the edge to success.
Yeah, I love that. And I think that first off, and I love that you're able to hold on to what the Dalai Lama said. I believe in action over everything, right? You hear this all the time. You're like, action speaks louder than words. And it's true, because it does. Without action, nothing in your life is going to happen. Like, I think about this every single day. Like I can think about having a handful of gummy bears in my hand right now as much as I want. But until I make the effort to put them there, they're not ever going to be there. That's also because I love gummy bears, just for transparency. But my point being this, like, you do have to put in the work. Excuses are such a big part of the Western nomenclature. You see it all the time. You see it in entrepreneurship. You see it in life and sports and everything. It feels like there's always this space to be able to leverage excuses, to kind of tap into this idea that it's all right to give up and quit on yourself. And I will be the first person to admit I have done that so many times in my life that eventually, when I hit my rock bottom and I said, what am I willing to do to have the life that I want to have? The words "no excuses, just result" became the precursor for everything.
Yeah, and
And
that's
that
that's
became this
the
huge sense of personal responsibility. So what was that like for you to come to that realization, Mike?
Yeah, man. I mean, I think that's the secret that nobody tells you right up front, is that everybody's looking for the strategy or the plan or the tool or the tactic that's going to get them, the quote unquote, their version of success. But nobody tells you that the strategy and the plan actually emerges through the actions, because you need that feedback loop. You need to kind of make your best educated guess and say, I have a goal that I value. I have an underlying emotion or story that I'm telling myself of why I'm not going to quit no matter what. And when I take the action, your emotions are telling you that it worked and you're making progress. If your positive emotions are kicking off, you feel good, it's telling you that you're doing things that are making progress towards your goals. And when your negative emotions kick in, you feel angry, you feel frustrated, you get sad, those are telling you that you're not making progress towards your goal. So you want to fall in love with this process of action, monitor my emotions, and course correction. And eventually, if you don't give up, you'll get there. That's 100%. I've never seen anybody that set their mind to something, believed they could get there, and didn't give up, that didn't achieve it. It's just, I mean, I'm sure there's examples of millions of people out there that don't achieve their goals, but that's why we have satellites. That's why we have trips to the moon. That's why we have trips to Mars planned. It's like somebody had that idea and just didn't give up and figured it out. Richard Branson, who just flew in space, he said it took him 17 years with a dedicated team of figuring out all the things they had to figure out before they actually did it.
And that speaks so highly to patience. Everyone that I coach, everyone who comes into my programs, everyone who does anything with me knows that the number one word that they have to learn is patience.
Yeah.
Because it's going to take time. Like, you're not going to be able to create the life that you want to have overnight, but that doesn't mean you're not going to be able to create it. And I think that when you really leverage this understanding that on a long enough timeline, you can have anything that you want to have, like, that is powerful.
Well, I think the other thing too, to speak into that, is we don't like to be judged, because really it comes down to recognizing that we're an organism, and we really care about two things like that are hardwired into us. We care about survival, and we care about reproduction. Because that's one way that we can survive past our existing life, is by producing children, and we're heavily wired to recognize. We actually have a part of our brain that counts status against. We're always judging and comparing ourselves to other people. We don't like to be judged, because that may impact the chances that I might find a suitable mate and reproduce. And so if you can understand that, like, we don't like to be judged, that's why people set these goals and don't achieve them, because they give up. They don't like to be judged negatively. They say, hey, it's New Year's Day, I'm going to be in the gym every day this year. And by January 5th, we give up. Because as soon as we don't hit the goals that we publicly project, we now have a judge. The world is watching us. Your family and friends are like, hey, how's that workout going? It's January 6th. I haven't seen you do it yet. And then as soon as that happens, we don't like that feeling. And so we give up and we quit. So if you can just kind of get over that fear of being judged, what anybody else thinks about you, really pick something that means something to you to go after. And it's like, no matter what, I'm going to achieve this, no matter what anybody else thinks, and fall in love with that process. And when you do get judged, be able to kind of take it on and brush it off your shoulders. You'll get there. I promise.
And Mike, I've come to the conclusion, which has been super beneficial in my life, that I'm being judged anyway. And so I just think, like, what does that have to do with me?
Exactly.
What does other people's judgment have to do with me? And the truth is nothing, but we carry a lot of shame. We carry a lot of guilt. We carry a lot of fear. Sometimes we're even afraid to talk about the thing that we want to create, because we're so stifled by this idea that people might think we're a farce or different or whatever that is. Yeah. And I have found the only real way to actually step into that is by stepping into it, right? Exactly. Action is everything. But when you're on,
I are doing that, like with our podcasts and stuff that we're doing, by putting yourself as the face of the brand out into the public, it's like one of the hardest, most courageous things you can do. But we don't realize it when you start. You're just like, I'm going to start a podcast. You don't know what you're doing. You're fumbling around. You're making mistakes. But if you just get comfortable with the fact that that's not the point. The point is that I make daily progress on this podcast, or daily progress. It's like, I don't know. It's people want to go to the gym and do 5,000 sit-ups tomorrow and have 6-pack abs. And that's just not how it works. It's like, if you did 1 sit-up today, 2 sit-ups tomorrow, 3 sit-ups the next day, and you keep making progress, I guarantee you a year from now, you'll be ripped.
Yeah. And it is progression, but how do you not quit on yourself in the middle of this? right? You started, let's say you made it to January 6th. You're going for it. You're in the gym, you're doing the things, but the pressures of the world, the weight of family, community, relationships, negative self-talk, like how do you not quit on yourself?
You need to create a story in your head that's more painful than quitting itself. And so when I thought about quitting on my entrepreneurial dreams, which I thought about a ton of times because it wasn't working for almost a decade, I remembered, okay, if I quit, what does that show my kids? And it showed my kids what it looks like to say you're going to do something and not follow through. And that was just more emotional and more painful to me than quitting itself. So if you can find a story that's more painful than quitting itself, you'll see yourself through all the dark days.
Yeah, and I do think that you have to leverage that. And my story, Mike, has become my biggest fear is that I'll be on my deathbed with regret.
Right.
Nothing terrifies me more than the idea that I didn't do everything in my power to have the life that I want to have.
For
And
sure.
and so much of this is reframing those stories. But we face adversity, right? So much of it. And we just let ourselves down. Even though we hear this, somebody listening right now, they're gonna go, great, Mike. Thanks for all the advice, Mike. Like, what do I do when my back is really against the wall? Like,
Yeah.
how do you like, what is it that you're tapping into?
Mhm.
You know, because people say this thing about the story all the time.
Yeah.
But if you were to name it, what are you tapping into that is giving you the drive to propel you through that moment when you're like, I just want to quit?
A lot of times it's actually doing the opposite of what you want to do. Sometimes you just need to take a break because it's the thing about entrepreneurship that I didn't realize in the beginning is there is no separation from how I treat my health, how I treat my mental health, how I treat my business, my family, my kids, my community, my parents, it's all this blend together. And it's really entrepreneurship is life. It's like you're going to face adversity. You're going to face things that you didn't see coming. And how I explain it to my clients, like when I go speak at events and stuff, I explain it like your brain is almost like a retractable stadium roof on the top of your head. It opens and closes, and when you open it wide, you're accepting the complexity of the world. You're thinking about, can I pay my bills? Can I pay my team? Is a meteor going to hit the earth? What's going on with COVID? Like you're accepting complexity into your brain. When you accept too much complexity, you kind of need to close the roof back up a little bit. And so when you feel the adversity is too much and the complexity of the game has become too much, you need to kind of go back and focus on the basics. Am I breathing? Am I sleeping properly? Am I sleeping consistently? What am I putting in my body? Am I drinking enough water? Because it's amazing. And I wish I would have known this, 15 years ago, but most of those overwhelming feelings and the adversity becoming too much are solved by just getting a good night's sleep, starting to take care of your health, exercise a little bit, put good nutrition in your body. And what you're doing is you're kind of closing that complexity back up for your brain so that you can kind of reset. And I mean, how many times have you just said, you know what, I'm not going to deal with this right now. I'm going to go to sleep. And then you wake up and you're like, what was I so stressed out about yesterday? And sleep is a huge one, like when people aren't sleeping properly and they're not sleeping consistently, it really messes us humans up.
Yeah, it does. You know, it's funny because sometimes I'll go to these conferences around the country, around the world, different time zones. You're up all night, you're talking to people in the hallway till 5 o'clock in the morning. And then you do that for a couple of days, and then you're like, oh man, this is worse than torture.
Right.
So it's really funny because I've made sleep a priority in my life in a way where only on the rare occasion do I even allow that to happen. And
Yep.
and one of the things I think about a lot is there is a lot of nomenclature around this idea of just push through, push through, push through, push through. And this applies not just to entrepreneurship, but to life, where people are like, you just got to keep going. Yeah, it sucks. Yeah, it's hard. And I am such a proponent of take the break. And I
Yeah.
want you to talk about that more because I don't think that people heard it because you move through it kind of quickly. Can you talk about why you take that break, why it matters, why you should listen to your intuition on it, and the results of doing so?
Yeah, I mean, I want to play a game that I can. Number one, I don't believe that there's a destination to. So I have these incentive rewards on seeing progress towards daily goals or weekly goals or monthly goals. But I want to play a big enough game but then I want to break it down to my habits and patterns so that I can sustain that game. Like, to use that gym analogy, if I did go to the gym tomorrow and bench press 5,000 times, I'd be so wrecked I couldn't play the game for another month. I'd have to spend time in the hospital. So it's like you need to find that perfect rhythm for yourself. And the perfect rhythm involves taking breaks. It's like I kind of have two chunks during my day. I can work really hard on high IQ activities in the morning for about 90 minutes. And then I got to take about a 60-minute break, and I have another 90-minute chunk. And sometimes I come back for a third 90-minute chunk, but it's like I'm trying to find that perfect rhythm for myself. And when I start to feel overwhelmed, I stop. And I think I don't know, looking now, I think the process is more about expanding your mind, but narrowing your focus. Like, what are the narrow things that I choose to focus on and control? And I have to let everything else go. It's really that you hear that all the time, these things about you've got to allow, you've got to let go, but they seem kind of woo woo and like, yeah, that's great. What's that actually mean? It means that you're not going to focus on it. It almost becomes frustrating to your family and friends because, like my parents will say something to me or my wife will say something to me. And I'm like, yeah, I'm not going to spend any time on that. I'm not going to spend any time, energy, or mental focus on that because it's not important to me and what I say I'm trying to accomplish with my life. And so in the beginning, you just have to decide. You just have to say, this is what I think I want to accomplish, and allow that action that you talked about to give you the market feedback. And sometimes your goals and your dreams and your vision will shift, and sometimes they won't. Sometimes it just becomes more and more narrow, which means you're letting go of trying to control anything else outside of that narrow view.
I like that a lot. And I think about that all of the time. I accept ACC, EPT, what I cannot control. And because that, it's given me such a beautiful way to think about life. And there's a sense of freedom in it. There's something about it that allows me to move about the world without the same pressures that I used to feel. Because I just go, what are you going to do? Like, I don't get to control it. Like, it doesn't matter.
Yeah, you're
Mike,
driving yourself mad, right? Like you're like, well, what is this person thinking of me? And is a meteor going to hit? Like, if you take those kind of all the things that you can't control. I mean, literally, a plane could potentially hit my house right now while we're talking. I could die. But does it do me any good to waste any mental energy on that? Does that help any entrepreneurs in the world? Does that help me accomplish my goals in any way? And if the answer is no, you just need to let it go and stop thinking about that stuff.
yeah, absolutely. That applies to life, career, relationship, health, everything. Like the fear that we can carry with us just by having these outside the norm thoughts. And a lot of it can be informed because of the traumatic experiences that we had. We're hyper vigilant. There's a lot of rhyme and reason to how that can happen. But if you just start thinking about this idea of letting it go, man, it's going to play such an important role in your future. Mike, I
Yeah,
want
for
to ask you a little bit about the association. Can you
sure.
talk a little bit more about the Association of Mental Health and Well-Being for Entrepreneurs?
Yeah, I started this. This is actually after I mentioned I had 4 distinct moments in my career where I crashed. I would say that the world felt so overwhelming. I was thinking about quitting. I didn't want to be there. I was trying to drink it away, like, because alcohol is a very good drug for trying to escape responsibility and reality of things. And I woke up and I just said, there's so many other people that I know, so many of my clients, so many of my friends, that behind the scenes, everybody's projecting this perfect life and pictures on boats and in front of Lamborghinis. And yet I talked to that guy last week, and I know that he's struggling with his marketing. He's struggling with his relationship, whatever it is. And I woke up and I said, I'm going to do something about it. I'm going to have the courage to take action and do something to help support entrepreneurs, because those moments suck. Those moments really, really suck when you crash. And what we're working on right now, it's very new. I woke up, I had the vision, and I knew that I was going to take action and make progress on it, and it's going to develop as it develops. So what we're doing right now is we're putting together a 24/7, 365 entrepreneurial hotline. I don't know how that's exactly going to play out yet, I've got a board of directors that is helping me make some early decisions. We're going to hire a CEO to run the organization. But the bottom line is we want to give entrepreneurs a space, a community where they can reach out to somebody in those times when it's not working, and not, so many people are worried about what others think online or hurting their business. They don't want to do a public post and say, hey, you guys, I'm really struggling right now, because who wants to buy from a business that's really struggling right now? So it's like this weird game, entrepreneurial dance we play. And we need to give entrepreneurs a space where they have an outlet. They can get a release. Because if you kind of don't, it reminds me of the old, I don't know if you ever watched Seinfeld, but there was an episode where Kramer, it's called Serenity Now. And it's like, if you don't kind of release it once in a while, next thing you know, you're making rash decisions. If you don't let off some steam once in a while and have the conversation, things build up and they manifest and they multiply. And so it's like conflict delayed is conflict multiplied. You have to kind of have the discussion, face and deal what you're dealing with so that you can move past it.
Yeah, and we need support in that space. Statistically, entrepreneurs are the highest suicide rate outside of military in the world, and we really have to start changing the conversation around it. It's heartbreaking that we live in a society where we can't honor that. And you're right. I mean, who's going to buy something from someone who's like, I'm sad, my life sucks, I'm in pain, I'm suffering right now? And that's weird to me, because I'm like, isn't that why I should buy from them? Let's support them. Let's support entrepreneurship. Let's support each other's dreams and goals and hopes and ambitions and all the things that we're able to do as a communal species. It drives me fucking crazy, Mike, and I'm so happy that you're doing this. You have a proponent in me. Anytime, anywhere, I got your back. You tell me what you need. Once you get this up and running, obviously we'll make sure to put annotations in the show notes and all of those things so that we can support your mission and journey. As an entrepreneur, someone who has had a suicide attempt in the past, I can tell you that this is much, much, much needed in the world.
Yeah, for
Mike,
sure,
my
man.
friend, before I ask you my last question, can you tell everybody where they can find you?
Yeah, people can find me on my website is themakeovermaster.com. I'm on Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn. I try not to spend as much time on social media as I can, because it's detrimental to my own mental health, which brings me to a great book, by the way, Digital Minimalism by Cal Newport, on just kind of starting to separate yourself from the social media, because it's a trap. I would say that. So people can find me on my website. They can find me online, and I think if your viewers want to get involved with the Association for Mental Health, it's a weird website. It's amhwbe.org. And so you can put that in your show notes or something, and they can get involved by just getting on our list.
Yeah, absolutely, Mike. We will definitely do that. And my last question for you, my friend, is what does it mean to you to be unbroken?
I think for me, to be unbroken means that you are so focused on what your mission and your meaning is that you don't let anything else phase you that's outside of that. You're able to kind of quickly delineate, this matters to me or this doesn't, and you don't have any regret about letting go all the things that don't matter to you and your mission.
Powerful and poignant, my friend. I did not expect anything less. Thank you so much for being here. Unbroken Nation, thank you so much for listening. As usual, please like, subscribe, review, comment, tell a friend. And until next time, my friends, be unbroken. I'll see ya.